The meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District is called to order at 5:01 p.m. The machine is open for roll call.
Give me a minute. They got all the mics on.
I'm not on. Touch it, Mr. B.
He's here.
All members are present. All right. Please rise for the prayer and the pledge of allegiance.
Let us pray. We take this moment to acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bountiful blessings, especially for the parish's natural resources. We give thanks to God for our brave and courageous men and women in our military who daily risk their lives to protect our precious freedom, and we pray for our world leaders to know how to obtain world peace, especially in these days. We pray that this government body, comprised of both council and administration, will always serve our parish with honesty, humility, and equality to all. And as this government body gathers here today, we pray for the wisdom to know right from wrong and the courage to do which that is right. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have one deferral today. That's number 6B. I'm sorry, that's a withdrawal. Are there any other deferrals or withdrawals? All right, Barb, can you please begin the agenda?
There is no executive session. Number 3, status report by the Executive Port Director.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, and members of the board. I am Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District. Follows is my Executive Director's report for the reporting period of 13 December 2019 through 8 January 2020. Analogous to the Thanksgiving break in November, the second port meeting in December was canceled due to the Christmas and New Year's Eve holidays. During this time frame, I met with the University of Houston officials who have asked me to be their guest speaker at the Port of the Future conference in March. Our port project was referred to the University of Houston College of Technology by members in the AAPA, which will include airports, land ports of entry, and in our case, port improvement projects. We have met with individuals at the Union Pacific Railroad and provided them an update on the data shared with them from last year's Short Line Rail Conference in Omaha. They are tracking our project and asked to be briefed periodically on the container and POT projects. Lastly, I'd like to recognize our boat crew that was alerted to a fire this week. The fire was successfully extinguished without any injuries. The crew of Authority 2 was alerted regarding the bunkhouse of the state DOTD Ostrika locks on the east bank across from Buras. Evidently, the AC unit caught fire and the alert went out. The crew of Gavin Hamilton and Tommy Bacher responded, as well as supervisors Billy Conrad and David Sylvie. They were scrambled from Venice, stopped in Buras, and picked up 4 firefighters and quickly and safely put out the unit before any damage to the building was done. All of the above was performed without injury, and luckily there were no one in the bunkhouse at the time. Congratulations to all who were involved. Mr. Chairman, subject to your questions or comments, this concludes my brief.
Well, that's good news about putting out the fire quickly. That's great. Any questions?
Mr. Konovich, and then me.
Yes. I got y'all thing in the mail the other day, and I was going through it. Does y'all insurance pay for the employees to go to the Y for the healthy program? Because I asked ours if they would pay for the employees to go, and they said they didn't do that.
We were granted 20 memberships from the YMCA, free memberships for our employees, and we put it out to all the employees who were interested in taking advantage of that membership.
they granted y'all that from the council giving them $200,000, right?
This was last year, I'm not really sure.
That's what Mr. Becknell told me, that since the parish employees could go for free, they said the port employees was part of the parish too. So I was just asking if y'all went through y'all insurance or,
We don't go through the insurance. It was something from the YMCA itself.
all right, thanks.
Commissioner Russo?
Yes, Mr. Sanders, when do you think we can get an update on the container project that we are talking about consistently?
Good question, Mr. Russell. They were scheduled to be here this month. It got postponed because of conflicting schedules, and I am waiting. I should hear either tomorrow or Monday, I was told today in the email, of their return. And I will be setting that up ASAP.
And are they still doing a study?
Well, when we go in and sign the LOI, that will kick off a 6-month due diligence study.
I thought we did that last year for a 6-month study.
No, this will be between us and the carrier and the terminal operator.
And they're paying for the study?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Bartholomew?
Yes. Mr. General, Mr. Sanders, is there any way possible you can, not, well, any way possible, it's possible you can, look into the possibility, because we are in a state of emergency with the river crossing, if there's any way possible that the Belchase port boat can transport the people for the parish, the workers, back and forth, with a schedule to accommodate them being able to get here and be able to go to work, including your employees as well, if that can be worked out.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions from the audience? All right. Being none, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
3A, financial report, budget to actual.
There is no report.
Number 4, bids and advertisements. There are none. Number 5, introduction of ordinances and resolutions.
Do any commissioners have any interest? There are none? There are none? All right.
Number 6, ordinances and resolutions on second reading and final passage. 6C, an ordinance to rescind, annul, and set aside ordinance number 13-92, which authorized the port chairman to negotiate and enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement between the Plaquemines Parish Government and the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District for sharing and/or use of each other's assets, resources, and personnel to maintain the security and protection of the life and property in areas within the jurisdiction of the port in Plaquemines Parish and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
I'll offer this file. Am I on?
No, you're not huge.
Am I on there?
Yes.
Okay. I'll offer this file.
Second.
Any questions from the panel?
Yeah, I have a question. If this gets rescinded, what does this mean? I mean, are we going to go into a new CEA? I guess that'd be up to us to vote on, or does anybody have a comment about that?
Yes, if this is rescinded, then we will start back at square one.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Go, please, by all means.
Yeah. Based on the advice of our attorney and that of the parish attorney, I think it's very important that we do keep a CEA in place, regardless of what the agreement is. I just think it's good paper, makes good, solid relationships.
All right.
And it's also considered a best practice that we received from the state.
Certainly. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yes, Mr. Pierce, you agree with that?
Yes, sir. I've said in several meetings outside of council meetings that it's my belief we should have a CEA with the port, and I've said I believe that to be the case for legal reasons, and also probably equally as important audit reasons. And that's just my belief. That's my legal opinion, and I don't think I can say anything else more about it.
Rathburn, you agree with that?
Yes, Dr. Gui, we believe that CEAs are important. I know we've always been reminded that we want transparency. There's nothing more transparent than to have a CEA between governmental entities so that it's documented who is paying for what and what is being provided.
If there are concerns regarding the language of the existing CEA, would both of you be open to look at that language to see if there are maybe some ambiguities or maybe some provisions that can be applied to improve the CEA? Would that be good with you, Mr. Pierce?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think we should, every year when there's a change in circumstances, I mean, Mr. Bartholomew just brought up having the port assist the parish and moving what I understood to be pedestrians across the river. That's probably something that should be looked at. So those are the kinds of things that, you know, I think I would prefer to have in a document so that it's clear who's responsible for what, both for liability purposes, insurance purposes, and what the expectations are among the parties. If those types of things aren't written out and an accident happens, God forbid, you're going to have a lot of finger pointing, and you know, it would be my opinion that we could avoid that by ironing those types of items out in a CEA, which you could have a general CEA and you can amend it from time to time just like any other agreement. So as circumstances change, we can continue to amend a CEA, and obviously if the council wants a say in that process, you know, we could continue to bring the amendments before the body and you all can vote on the changes.
Mr. Rathburn, you agree with that?
Agree exactly with what Mr.
So the mechanism, let's talk about the mechanism. If the CEA is in place and changes need to be made or amended, is that something that would take Port Commission action, or would that be done through administration? What do you think?
We would follow the direction of the council. I mean, if you guys want us to bring it before, not every, I don't believe that every little service would definitely have to come before the council. But when you're talking about a substantial service, such as what Mr. Bartholomew just mentioned, or any other kind of service, I think, and it involves money, it involves liability, I believe we probably should bring that before the council.
I agree. Rathburn, yeah, I agree with that. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Garrett, do you have an opinion on it, given the recent court ruling?
Well, I mean, I think there's clearly, in my opinion, not a requirement by the law to have a CEA. But certainly the legislative auditor prefers a CEA, but it's not required, as I appreciate it, under Article 7, Section 14, as long as there is some documentation that the money's being transferred by one public body to another are for a valid purpose and not a donation one way or the other. It was my understanding that that was kind of outlined in the budget that was adopted, which kind of outlined how much money was going and to some extent what it was being used for. One of the items that was introduced at the summary judgment hearing was an affidavit issued by the finance director where he outlined how he came up with that very detailed number. It wasn't just a round number, and it was this for this service, this for this service, this for this service, this for this service. So it seemed like there was clear documentation, but certainly a CEA doesn't harm it. I just don't know if it's required.
If I could follow up just briefly. I think if we were just talking about a pure exchange of money, and obviously the hot topic for the lawsuit was the interagency transfers. I mean, I agree with Mr. Garrett. That was a true exchange of funds, and that can easily be documented. But I think when you're talking about the port providing ferry services for pedestrians, when you start talking about getting into liability issues, when you start getting into who's responsible for what, those issues and those concerns, I do not believe can be addressed by the supporting documentation that Mr. Garrett was referring to.
You can say my name?
Yeah, Mr. Roussel, you have the floor.
Yes. So let me ask these two lawyers who have eloquently agreed and come to this conclusion. Have you read the court case?
I've looked at the court case, yes.
You have? You have.
Yes.
And so would you agree that if we have to do a cooperative endeavor agreement, that the council would have to vote on it? Do you agree with that?
No.
You don't?
Not in every situation.
So you're making a new situation then?
I'm sorry?
You're making a as-we-go situation that it depends on who makes that decision. Mr. Lapine has taken a position that he's not really involved in the port. So who would make the decision for the administration as to what would be done and would not be done without the agreement specifically saying that?
You know, I think this issue can be worked out between administration and council. I mean, I think there's no reason why we can't sit down together and establish some policy and some guidelines about types of agreements at the port or types of amendments to a CEA that the port and the administration could just simply handle together. And there may be other things that you all want to say or an input in. So I think we can develop a policy. I think this council could develop a policy, and I have no reason to believe that the port and administration wouldn't follow that policy, especially when you're talking about funds and money. I mean,
So you're agreeing that this document does not address that?
which
The one that I'm asking to be rescinded today? And, well, let me skip all this. The very first paragraph says, the port may provide assets, equipment. Now, when the port says it may, that means who in the port makes that decision? Who in the port makes that decision? I'm asking that as a question.
Well, it would come up, be presented by the staff to our council,
No,
to our
I'm asking the question under this agreement, because y'all are separating us. You're putting the council over here and you're putting the port over here, and you got to work through a cooperative endeavor agreement that you say that we may need. My question is, if we asked, Councilman Bartholomew asked if you could provide a service, which he did in the past and y'all denied it, who would make the decision as to whether the port complies with the agreement, or the request, rather?
we would staff it and then make our recommendations to the board.
And if you decide not to do it, what happens?
I don't think that's a way of us deciding. We don't decide if we do it or not. I think that it's our recommendation to the port board. and
Have
the
you
port
not
board
decided
votes
that
on
in the
it.
past, not to do something that was requested of you?
No, when he asked a similar request in the past, I reported that we went to our insurance carrier, and our insurance carrier said that we couldn't do it. And that's what I reported.
And the body passed something to ask you to do it, and it wasn't done. But neither here nor there. This is not the document that I believe should stay on the books. This document has been cited by the assistant in not paying the intergovernmental fees that the parish attorney has referred to several times. And for that reason is why I think this document should go away. And if you want to work with another document to put together that we can look at for ferry service or something specific, I may be able to live with that. But I cannot live with this agreement here that gives the port may this, may that, and then you got to come up here and you got to get a vote from the same 9 people on both sides. I thought we had cleared that in a court case.
The court case didn't address that at all, Mr. Roussel. That is not what the court case addressed. That is not what the judgment says. That is not.
Mr.
It just
Rathbone,
isn't. Ask Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Rathbone, you and I were on opposite sides of this issue from day one, and you lost in the court. Now, I don't expect you
Not
to...
on the CEA, sir. The CEA was not an issue specific to providing these particular services that we're talking about. In particular, if you were to send this CEA that we're talking about, where Mr. Bartholomew has asked for the port to use one of its pieces of equipment and our resources for emergency purposes to move specifically parish employees back and forth for the purpose of being able to do their jobs, which is the issue of security and potentially protection of life, then within this CEA, based on the board allowing its designee, which in this case is Sandy Sanders, and moving down to the staff, we would be able to do that and work with Mr. Bartholomew and anybody in the administration to do so. Now, what is clear about this CEA that we're talking about, in particular, and you go into interagency fees, which has nothing to do with what we're talking about here right now in the court case, is if we're able to do this and be able to help the parish in such a way for emergency purposes, we will cover our own costs. That's what the CEA says, and vice versa if there's an issue that comes up. So we recommend that this CEA stays in place, and everyone, the administration, the council, and the port would abide by it so that we don't have these issues. Now, if the board decides to get rid of this CEA, that's your call. We would ask for auditing purposes that there would be some type of CEA in place, i.e. a policy, so we all know how to move forward, so that our policies and our procedures are the same, so that from the administrative side for the port and for parish government, we wouldn't have any issues regarding state or legislative auditors in any type of way as far as sharing resources and personnel and equipment.
Commissioner Roussel, Rennie, do you think, could y'all take 2 weeks and work on a new CA and leave this one in place? Are y'all willing to do that? Do you have the capacity to do that, Mr. Beers?
I do, but I mean, I've just gotten a sense and a feeling that Mr. Roussel believes we shouldn't have a CEA at all. And that's been my understanding of his position all along. So if that's the case, and I think we just have a respectful difference of opinion. If Mr. Roussel is saying today that he wants a clean slate and he wants us to go forward and draft some new document, if he's dissatisfied with this language, et cetera, I'm okay with that. But it's been my opinion that we should have a CEA because legally I think it's important for the reasons I stated earlier, and also because I think it's important for audit purposes.
And the port concurs with that opinion. I mean,
And I disagree with the opinion, and respectfully so, because this is an outdated CEA. This CEA says the port may do something. I don't think everybody has come to the realization of what the court case says, that this body makes the decisions. So we would go and we would vote for the CEA on the port side, and then an hour later we'd come and convene as the council and vote for it on the council side, which makes no sense to me. Now, if you want to do some type of CEA that says that we're going to use the Port Authority boat to carry some passengers, I said a minute ago, I may be able to live with that. However, this CEA says that they may do it and they may not do it. And their argument about we follow the board's policy, that's not accurate. They do what they want to do when they want to do it, and if they refuse to do it, they don't do it. Y'all have not participated in the port operation since you got here. Now, having said that, I'm going to ask that this outdated CEA be rescinded. And if you want to do something specific, then that's fine. But to sit here and say the port may provide this and the port may do this, and, the parish, and it says that if we want to provide 12 employees and they provide no more than 12 employees, that's what's in this CEA. Parish may provide housing and meals if available for all essential port personnel if we decide to do that. Those type of things. I don't see where we are going with this outdated CEA. I'm looking for a new vision of where we're going with the new court case and an understanding. And when we talk about policies, The port has different policies. You can laugh all you want, but this is the fact. Their policy, for instance, for paying parish employees insurance is different than the council's policy. They pay a higher percentage of their employees' insurance premiums, where the parish employees get less paid on their insurance premiums. So there's no consistency on policy. They have policies where they can assign vehicles to employees that drive to wherever. Different policy for the government. I'm looking to see some unanimity, if that's the right word, to where we can start working in the same vein and not have two tiers of employees, port employees and government employees, being treated differently. So, I mean, I don't know how much more I can say on this issue, other than the fact that, you know, they started arguing that we couldn't audit them. I mean, they had every right in the world. They got a vote from this council to argue whatever they wanted to argue in the court.
Commissioner Russo, one more minute.
They argued what they wanted, and they didn't get it. So to sit up there and say, that's not what the court case said, it says what I think it should say, and the decision was in the council's favor, and you may not like that, but that's the facts.
No, sir, not what you're saying right now. It is not.
The court didn't rule in our favor?
Not on the issue you're talking about. You're trying to make the court decision.
No, you're trying to argue the court case again.
No, ask Mr. Garrett if
I don't need to ask Mr. Garrett. And I read it.
Okay.
We're talking about CEA, sir, right now. That's what we're talking about, not audits, okay? So let's, if we can, Mr. Beers, if we can work together, I think we can figure out how to move forward with this.
Mr. Matthews, I don't want you to sit there and tell me what I can say and not say, or what we're talking about. We're talking about the CEA that's in place now. And I'm asking that it be rescinded, and it's outdated. That's what I'm saying.
Commissioner Gui? No longer.
Yeah, I'm done.
Mr. Chairman, I think we've heard the argument back and forth, and everyone on this council by now should have made their decision, so I'll call the question.
Would like to hear from the audience. Please come.
I'm Donald Valet, reside at 109 Nancy Court, Del Chase. I've followed this quite a bit for quite some time because I've been actively involved in the Port of New Orleans and the activities on this river. And I watched the debate go back and forth between the Port Authority and the council and the way we've been structured. And this court case that came up is quite clear as to how it ruled. And it's very simple to read. Now, I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to practice here or even do it. What you have before you is a CEA that's worthless. It doesn't give good meaning to the scope of what needs to be done in the full operation of what has to be done between the parish. It's been very unfair what's taken place to the parish employees to allow a sub-agency to come in and start dictating and paying more benefits to this agency than what we do. We should have uniformity between the parish and all of its sub-agencies. It should be consistent within its policies, its procedure, and its operations. And I think Mr. Roussel, in asking today for you all to rescind what's there and start over again, he's willing to start over again. Everybody needs to put their head together and find out what we need for this parish and make it fair to everybody with the administration, the council, and the port, because we need this port to move forward. But I think you ought to recommend do away with it today and move forward to a new one.
Chris Schultz, Bell Chase. Really quick, I wasn't planning on commenting on this, but my day job is external auditor. I go in and audit governments. I guarantee you, if we came in and audited the port without some, I'm not saying the CEA is outdated. That might be the case, but you do need something, because if we go in and ask for these, why y'all paying these expenses not budgeted to the parish without any type of agreement, any type of support, anything, it's going to cause issues on the port side. Also, like Mr. Beer said, if something happens liability-wise, whose liability does it go on? The parish, the port? I know you're saying that the court case is saying that y'all are the governing body, but technically, based on my understanding of everything, I'm not a lawyer, but yes, you should vote on it here, and then an hour later, vote on it on the council side. That way, it's clear who's responsible for what. Now, that goes into who can do, I mean, you can tell them, we're going to do this CEA. That's your right. But I still think you need some type of CEA in place to clearly dictate what goes where. That's just my opinion as an auditor, and I do this on a daily basis. If I came in, it's going to cause problems on the port side if they don't have anything. So just my view.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Call the question?
Thank you.
And the vote passes. All right. Next on the agenda.
There are no introductions of resolutions wherein a suspension is being sought. Number 8, approval of the December 12, 2019 meeting minutes.
So often.
Second.
You might want to recognize Mr. Matthews. He seems to
Oh,
have-
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Matthews.
I have nothing, sir.
All right. All right. Like to call a question?
We-
No, but we need a new one. We talked about that.
All right. Vote passes. Next agenda item. Oh, that's
Motion
all.
to adjourn.
All right. I'd like to call this meeting,
Motion to adjourn, please.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Seconded by Councilmember Bartholomew. Commissioner Bartholomew. All right. Call a question. All right. What's that?
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Newberry.
All right. The motion passes 9-0. And this meeting of the Plaquemines Port Harbor Internal District is adjourned at 5:33 p.m.